Hello and welcome. Now in the last video I forgot to turn this microphone thing on. So sorry if the sound was a little low. And I was thinking, after all these talks, videos I've recorded, why on that occasion did I think? Well, it was simple. It's a lack of mindfulness. I was probably hurrying and getting everything in place and probably had my mind on something else rather than what I was doing. And when we practice SOTΑPANNA, mindfulness in everything we do, we learn to focus our attention on what is in front of us, whether that be something we're doing or someone. What we're doing, or that someone, should be that is most important to us, and therefore should occupy all of our focus, attention, and care. And it is only when our thoughts deviate from this that mistakes are made, things are forgotten, things go wrong, people are hurt, we harm ourselves, we have to go back and redo things. Now, fortunately, on that occasion, at least I'd remembered to turn the camera on. And only on one previous occasion, I'd forgotten to do that also, and had to then re-record the talk, or record the talk seemingly for a second time, albeit the first. And there's nothing quite like doing something like that to remind you about mindfulness. And when we make a mistake, we often hear said, we learn from our mistakes. Well, you won't do that again, will you? And it is true. So mindfulness, SOTΑPANNA, isn't some esoteric spiritual ideal. It is a practical reality of all of our everyday lives. So today, when I was plugging in the little device and setting the phone in position, I was paying extra attention to ensure that I'd turned the microphone on. You'll sometimes see me check the little lights, thus, that it is connected with this over there. And this is care. Not for the material objects in themselves, they're just things, but care in what I'm doing, hopefully for others, for you. Because I know what it's like. There's nothing worse than listening to a Dharma talk if the sound is a little bit low and you've got to keep going back 10 seconds because there was some ambient noise that made it difficult to hear what the speaker was saying. So we like the audio at least to be clear. It's very important. I've had to stop listening to some talks where the audio is always in and out, and it's okay, great to practice, exercise khanti, patience, patient endurance. But for the purposes of Dharma, it isn't necessary. There's so much we can read, we can listen to, that is clear, and we can absorb the Dharma for the content it holds without having to practice straining our ears to pick up on something that's being said. So I just thought I'd mention a practical use of mindfulness, and in my case, how even monks, myself I'm referring to, after many years of practicing meditation, sometimes through lack of mindfulness, can make mistakes. Mistakes can be of any form of body, speech, or mind. And I think it's important occasionally to not seek forgiveness, but ask forgiveness of all those you may have offended at any time in the past, through any of your acts of body, speech and mind, whether intentional or not intentional, unintentional, for any harm you may have caused, serious or not so serious. Just so as you've identified and you've become aware of the mistakes you might have made. This is all part of the overall practice of care for others, harmlessness, all part of reinforcing, boosting our sense of morality, sila, the 5 precepts, but overall referring to doing no harm to either ourselves or others, but also with the development of wholesome mind states, doing as much good as we can within our capabilities to help others. Now, the first comment we come to. Why do you call it rebirth? Why can't it be the first time I was born? So, I'm just being a little mindful of the cats there, because they were playing around the camera, the kittens. They've been a bit troublesome this morning, to say the least, but I won't go into that. They're very sweet, they're tired now. The reason we call it rebirth is to distinguish it from reincarnation, which is not what we're talking about in Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism at least. But in terms of what the Buddha taught, rebirth is as a result of causes and conditions we put in place. Now, I've spoken to about this at some length many times, but I understand what you're saying. Why call it rebirth? Why isn't it the first time we were born? Because we cannot determine our first birth. When you come to understand through right view the nature of rebirth, it is evident that we are here as a result of birth. And that is as a result of causes and conditions, karma. Karma vipaka, the results of those actions. And that means there was a previous birth. The first birth cannot be traced, cannot be determined, unless you could recollect, remember all of your past lives. If you cannot remember any of your past lives, that's okay. Rest assured you've been born now, which is why this is birth. But we don't call that rebirth. We just refer to it as birth. Jati, I think is the word in Pali. Birth, not rebirth. So we're born as a result of ignorance, causes and conditions in the past. And that is our beginning in this lifetime. This is the only opportunity we have to alter the cause of events that follow. We cannot change the past, but we can change the future by what we're doing in the present. So that's what we focus on, the present here and now. So why do I call it rebirth? Because that's what it is, but you can just call it birth. Why isn't it the first time you've been born? Because I think that's unlikely. That would imply you have come from nothing. You've just come from the pure biological, chemical, physical reaction. That creates your physical body made up of the 5 khandhas that we've talked about again many times, and thinking brain. So inclusive in those 5 khandhas is the thinking brain and its processing. Your body, rupa, thinking brain, nama. Nama, rupa, thinking brain, body. That's physically reborn as a result of your mother's and father's relationship. This is birth. But you'll come to find, I'm thinking you're quite young, the person asking this question, because you'll come to see, the older you get, you'll come to see that this is most likely not the first time you've had this experience of life. Not necessarily just through the wisdom that comes in Buddhist practice, but just from the experience of life itself. we come to see there are things we can cope with, things we can deal with, things we can do that no one's taught us, that we haven't inherited. They're neither from nurture or nature, but seemingly from an ability, an inherent quality. That has to have come from past lives. And the older you get, the less you can doubt that there were past lives, Buddhist or not Buddhist. Unless you're so indoctrinated with other philosophies that you were created through some miracle and all of those skills are God-given, then you could say, well, that's the reason. Through pure belief, speculation, hearsay. But if you're more scientific in mind, you'll think, well, if I can react, I can do this like this now, and no one's shown me how to do that, and I've never experienced it before, or even heard of it before. Where did it come from? Especially this is evident when you take yourself out of a normal situation and put yourself into some completely alien situation. As many travelers do, as many monks like myself have done, coming from their own Western societies and plonking themselves in Asia or somewhere like that in a totally different culture, to live in a totally different environment. You think, this isn't as alien as you might think, because it all comes so naturally. Why? Because it's something you've experienced before. Okay. I had an inquiry concerning faith in Lord Buddha's claims about the cosmos. And then you explain some of the statements in the Nikayas as being grand claims about the structure of the cosmos. So one must remember, and I don't know whether this can answer a few comments I've had recently. A lot of comments are coming recently from one video which was made ages ago, and I was in a different country, so it has to have been at least 2 years ago. And why that suddenly provoked a lot of comments, I don't know. This must be something to do with how YouTube put that video in front of people, or what they're searching for at the moment. I'm not sure. But it's coming from a lot of other religions saying that I said that everything in Buddhism can be proven. And actually, that is true. Otherwise I wouldn't have said it. But I'm referring to Buddhism as in the core teachings of Buddhism that we take from the Sutta Pitaka. So the Sutta Pitaka being the written down talks, Dharma Desanas, Dharma talks of the Buddha and his close disciples. Firstly verbally transmitted and then subsequently written down, albeit some hundreds of years later. The accuracy of those cannot be 100% verified, of course. It is said that Ananda, the Buddha's closest disciple, being as he was like his PA, his secretary, okay, he had a photographic memory and could remember all of the Buddha's discourses. And at the first council, some 100 years after the Buddha's parinibbana, these having been verbally transmitted by way of recitation, were then written down. But of course, even so, we know that these wouldn't have been word for word accurate, but we don't look at that as what we're trying to believe. What I'm referring to in terms of what can be proven is the overall concept of Buddhist teachings, the concept of rebirth, the concept of karma, the concept of the Four Noble Truths, and how the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path can free us from suffering in this lifetime and free us from rebirth into the next. This is the general core teachings of Buddhism, the reflections on the characteristics of our lives and our existence. All this is scientifically based on what we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and experience thinking about in this lifetime whilst we're alive, here and now. We can make adjustments to it, we can change things that are changeable, we can accept things that are unchangeable. Either accept things with resistance or accept things with equanimity, therefore having peace and contentment in our lives. Whereas other religions are referring to what happens after a life that can only be believed, it cannot be proven. Now, in the nature of the Buddha's desanas, Dharma desanas, many analogies, even fables or fairy tales or stories are used to help describe certain principles, such as I was just talking about. And it is those certain principles that I was just talking about that I am saying need not to be proven, let alone have to be proven. We know there is suffering. There is no doubting that. If you doubt it, just try and sit still for a few minutes. You will have to move, probably. Why? Because you're suffering. There it is, dukkha. There's no doubting that. You don't have to believe that. A God created us all. There is a heaven, there is a hell. A prophet who taught, died for our sins, was resurrected into eternity. Has to be believed, doesn't it? Yes, I know from the many comments there were countless eyewitnesses. So there were too, to the teachings of the Buddha, whom, after all, taught for 45 years, not just 3. So there were many more thousands of eyewitnesses and accounts of those teachings. But we're not discussing the veracity, the accuracy of the words themselves as they are written down, but the meaning of that content, the overall principle of that content. And the overall principle of Buddhism is different to that of theistic, faith-based religions. In a sense, it can be said that Buddhism is not a religion, if a religion is defined as a faith-based belief in a higher power. But if a religion is a philosophy, it is, like other philosophies, a way of living well. Whether you choose to do that through belief or confidence in a system that you can realize here and now, in the present moment, is up to us all individually. So there's nothing to be challenged here, no challenge here, nothing to be debated here. Believe, do as you will, what you want. No one's trying to convert anyone. I'm only describing, as I understand it from my own practice, the way it is. So, when we look at Buddhist cosmology, where it's described in the Pali Canon, it doesn't actually go into so much detail as you describe in this long comment here. It certainly doesn't refer to flat earths and things like that, as far as I am aware. But there is an element of Buddhist cosmology that is discussed or described in the scriptures, like the heavenly realms and such like, the hell realms and such like, but they can always be considered to be allegorical. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not being told to believe that. Throughout all of the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha is saying that we should practice and establish, find out experientially for ourselves. Okay? So, concerning faith in the Buddha's claims, the Buddha said this, the Buddha said that throughout his teachings, based on his own experience. If you choose to doubt from his recollections of the experience, it is perhaps better to doubt the translation or the way it was subsequently written down later or understood than what he was actually alluding to. Because you must remember, the Buddha, being an arahant, like any other arahant, cannot lie, cannot tell an untruth of any kind, and certainly cannot do harm. And by telling any lie or telling any untruth is going to cause harm, ultimately. This is why he's so specifically in saying, don't believe me, try this out for yourself, experience it for yourself. But through your practice, through meditation, you will experience various phenomena that will allude to and will give you a better understanding of what is described in Buddhist cosmology. Now, it could be that it's just meditative experience leading to, but prior to sunyata, emptiness. It is just, again, just phenomena. But we're not looking to understand and describe Buddhist cosmology. Maybe some Buddhists are, that's their interest, but that isn't the practice here. That isn't what I'm talking about. That isn't what I'm doing. I can't give you any references to it in any of the sutras because I'm not interested in it. It's not part of my practice. It's not relevant. So you have an inquiry, read about it, believe it or don't believe it, it doesn't matter. But don't waste your time over it, because if you don't believe it, it cannot be proven. If it could, anything requires any belief means it hasn't been proven, doesn't it? So I would put down anything you read that requires belief, that doesn't have scientific evidence and proof. We were so often chastised, reprimanded, punished, even physically in school, for demanding that our teacher monks would, prove it then. You'd say to them, prove it. And we were called, at some volume by some monks, Barabbas boys. Barabbas being the murderer, scoundrel that the people chose to save from crucifixion instead of Jesus. So I was one of the proud members of the Barabbas Boys Club. Not so much, I was just actually asking, I thought, a valid question. Well, if it's so true, all this Bible stuff, prove it. Where's the documentary evidence? And they're saying, you're a Barabbas boys because you've got no faith. And that's true. I had no faith because I wanted scientific documentary evidence and proof. But I still persevered through life for many years with that, because that's all I knew. Ultimately, I realized there's no proof. When I found out about Buddhism, studied Buddhism, and came to understand what the practice of Buddhism is, and that there was no need for any proof, because it was just based on what we're experiencing, and what we're doing anyway, and also what we are already. We're already inherently, naturally kind people. For someone to be cruel to another, whether it's human or animal, I think it probably takes a little bit of effort and deviancy off the natural path. Unless, of course, you're starving and you need to eat. But even then, I think people would kill humanely in order to get food. I don't think anyone enjoys, unless there's something really wrong with them, enjoys inflicting suffering on others. So we're naturally, inherently good. Whereas as Barabbas boys at school, we were taught that we were naturally, inherently, and born sinners. And if it wasn't for our Saviour, that was it, the end. We're doomed to an eternity of hell and brimstone. So this Barabbas boy sitting before you here, whom probably hasn't answered your question specifically, but this is of deep concern to you because your family, you firmly believe in rebirth. And you've verified how karma works in this lifetime. And you've no doubt about all of the other stuff. So don't worry about the Buddhist cosmology stuff. Yeah, take it or leave it. I leave that too. In Theravada Buddhism, it doesn't really come much into it. Now, I have to be careful here, because if you're from here, where I am, in Sri Lanka, they include a lot of other stuff, as well as the Pali Canon. Even though Theravada Buddhism comes from here, and the Pali Canon comes from here. Subsequently, lots has been added on top. But that's the same in all Buddhist countries. They have their cultural additions. But I don't think that is the case. So, yeah, you can leave that aside if you don't choose to go with it. Well, I do. So there we are. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. But if it can't be proved, just put it down. At the end of all these talks, it's generally the normal thing for monks to say, if there's something useful, use it. If not, just let it go. Because we're not trying to say that everything we're saying is either correct or should be put into practice or should be used. But for you to take from it what is useful to you in your circumstances and what you can do, and leave aside without it troubling you what isn't. That's the same for all of the scriptures. Buddha's claim of visiting heavenly realms and speaking to devas cannot be proven. Ah, here we go. I think we're going to get a list of these now. I thought I'd edit them. No, you see, this cannot be proven, and the Buddha says on many occasions that what he knows is... So what he teaches, what we are to understand about Buddhism, is like the leaves he could hold in his hand as compared to all of the leaves in a forest, is what he said to his monks, being what he knows and what he's experienced. So he might use, by way of analogy, his visiting of heavenly realms and his teaching devas. So during the night watches, he would use that time to teach devas in the deva realms. And this is also where the Abhidharma is attributed to, because it's too complex for us beings to understand even. And, you know, I can understand that. I think it's way too complex to even bother with. I've looked at it, studied it, and left it aside again. One of those things. You can choose to leave it if it's not necessary to your life. So, fine, it cannot be proven. No. No, I haven't said that that can be proven. But it also cannot be disproven. Like, nor can the existence of God, Jesus, heaven, hell. That cannot be disproven either. But no one is trying to disprove it. But then also it cannot be proven, so nobody would try to prove it. Don't worry about things that can't be proven or disproven. What's the point? It's never going to reach a conclusion, is it? There's enough to deal with in the reality here and now, isn't there? What we've got to face in each and every moment. Why on earth would we be worrying about there's 32 realms, all those different realms or something like that, when, no, there's not 32, is it 8? I can't remember. But why worry about all those different realms when we're in this realm now, with all we have to deal with within this realm, in this lifetime? Why worry about our past lifetimes? We can't change that. That's just like worrying about the past within this lifetime. We can't change it. Pointless. And don't worry about the future, because we cannot predict it. It's just imagination. All that's of any sense and use to us is here and now, this present, the present moment. It's all we can do, all we can change. It's also a great place of refuge. Most of our suffering, most of our anxiety, worries, concerns, and even the experience of pain is as a result of imagination, thinking about the future. Now, if you have a headache in the present moment, it's just for that moment, isn't it? If you have a headache for 1 minute, it's for 1 minute. But if you think, oh, this headache's going to last for a week or a day or an hour, that's how long the headache is going to cause you suffering for, and how much suffering in that present moment. But you're only experiencing that headache from moment to moment. But if you just relax about it in the present moment, more likely the tension will relieve, and the headache will go more quickly. But if we worry about the future, because we're projecting the suffering we're experiencing now into the future, rather than seeing it as just that in the present moment, impermanent suffering, but out of our control, and just that, now, it's so much less than if we, imagine this could go on for a week of suffering. I've been meditating for years and have a hard time not wanting to meditate, as it feels like a chore, even though I know how important it is. Are there any tricks of the trade that can help remedy this to get that initial vigor back again? Do it right. Sama samadhi, right samadhi. Sama sati, right mindfulness. If it's a chore, it's not being done right. If it's physically uncomfortable, physically difficult, adjust your posture. That goes without saying. If it's a case of motivation, you've been meditating for years. If you'd got any beneficial results as a result of that meditation, you would see, you'd have motivation for continuing meditation. You'd want to meditate. If you saw your equanimity developing, your ability to deal with difficult situations, discomfort, even pain, your ease of contentment, and therefore a much happier life in general coming as a result of your meditation, you would want to meditate for those reasons, the results in themselves alone. And if you're meditating correctly, the experience of meditation itself is very pleasurable indeed, not to mention physically and mentally restorative, more so than sleep even. So go right back to basics, go back to the drawing board and check your posture. Maybe find some resources like guided meditation, or even check out the shortest version or summary of the Anapanasati Sutta and go back to simple breath meditation. Any kind of, I don't know, you're not describing what meditation you're doing, so I can't really answer your question in terms of tips and tricks of the trade. There are no such thing. There are no tricks. There is no trade. Meditation isn't a doing thing. It is a not doing thing. It is a sitting and letting go of everything. So it's not a trick. It's letting go of any ideas you may have. So if you think there's a system, a trick, or you're doing some routine that you've been taught, then put that aside for now. And just, as I describe meditation, just sit, correct your posture, be awake, but gently allow your eyes, when your eyes are closed, allow your body to just in its own time become relaxed and settle. And your mind in its own time to settle and become calm and peaceful. Ultimately, as a result of this practice over a period of time, you will develop mindfulness throughout all of your daily activities, because you're developing concentration with your mind in your formal sitting meditation. You're developing focus, samadhi, on a meditation object like the breath, which means your mindfulness, as I was talking about at the beginning, will be so much sharper throughout all of your daily activities. You'll make less mistakes. Your days will go more smoothly. You will be more successful in life. You will get promotions. You will pass exams. You will earn more money. I've proven this. It works. You can do that. You can be successful in business through mindfulness. It used to be called in the 80s, what did they call it? We had all sorts of government-funded training courses we used to go on, invented by Americans such as Dale Carnegie and such like, whom I'm sure plucked a lot of their resources of information from not only psychology, but some of the more fringe philosophers the likes of Alan Watts and Osho and people like that, because they are so accurate in their and other religions too, other things, but they're so accurate in their description of understanding the way the mind works, both in the nature of the service provider and the consumer, the customer. Understanding the way people's minds work is what the Buddha is teaching us. How to understand how our own minds work. So when you've learned through all of these courses how to understand how others' minds work, you can start to really get involved deeply into understanding how your own mind works. And in reverse of that, by understanding your own mind, you can understand how other people's minds work. So suddenly you're saying meditation is a chore. How can it be? What are you doing? Send me an email. Tell me what you're doing, and I'll tell you, stop doing that and do nothing at all. Absolutely nothing at all. Just try and sit for an hour doing nothing at all. And if you haven't got the motivation to do that, I'll just say this. If you do that for 7 days in a row, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, 1 hour when you wake up, 1 hour before you go to sleep, for 7 days in a row, without fail, without excuse, without deviation, I guarantee you will see the results. And I can say that. And you can choose to believe me or disbelieve me. It doesn't matter, because you will experience it for yourself if you do that. If you do that. So there's some motivation for you. That's a trick. It's not the trade, but that's how you do it. Give yourself a reason to do it, because there's a guarantee at the end of it that everything in your life will change and you will be successful. Don't come back to me and say, well, you do that already. You meditate an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, without telling me what you're doing whilst you're meditating. Because if you're sitting there quoting lists or reciting verses, that isn't meditation. All I'm referring to in meditation is just sitting and doing absolutely nothing. When you've got that opportunity to do nothing, which is very rarely, even for monks, even for someone without any duties or things to do, your mind's still doing things, it's thinking. Your body's still going here, there, sort of sometimes it seems automatically on an autopilot, because it's our natural instinct. But when you sit and you meditate and you absorb in samadhi, your mind stops thinking, your body stops doing. And there's no greater incentive to meditate than that. So there we are. I hope you can find some use in that. May I humbly ask about the experience referred to in Pali as SOTÄPATTI. So usually the word would be SOTÄPANNA, which is the first stage of enlightenment. Not so much an experience, but a stage we attain to having fully understood the Four Noble Truths, which includes the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes, of course, right view. So you understand within right view the characteristics of existence, avijja, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, anatta, not self, and rebirth, and karma, which means actions, the results of your actions of body, speech and mind, are the causes and consequences for the future. Good actions, bad future. Bad actions, bad future. That's fairly easy to comprehend. and you reap what you sow, if you like. You can relinquish all rites and rituals pertaining to belief. So it doesn't mean you have to stop chanting, you have to stop bowing to the Buddha statue. If that's mindfully reminding you of having taken refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, which I've spoken on about before at length, but that's just all it is. It's not asking any external magical force for help. It's reminding yourself that all we can do is practice to help ourselves. And by that example, help many others also. Because they can just follow your example and help themselves. So we give everybody the tools to help themselves. If we were sick, we'd take the medicine, but by taking the medicine, we're enabling everybody else to have the same medicine and take it also and cure themselves of suffering. So abandoning rites and rituals, abandoning, it's called Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, thinking by any way that this physical body or this thinking brain is in any way what you are. Oh, I am Dr. such and such. I had such an email of such length with the man's name, with all of the letters and the titles, was a paragraph in itself. I thought, do you need such a long name? I mean, I can't, my name is Bhante Dharmarakita Bhikkhu officially. I never use Dharmarakita because it's far too long and difficult to spell. I'm either called Bhante if I have to use a name of anything at all, and if I have to sign off on something, I put Bhante D. D also being my initial of my former Christian name, so it serves many purposes, but it's not for anything other than something. As for any qualifications and such like, what relevance do they have to me now? I've got letters after my name. I'm not saying what they are, but they're irrelevant, aren't they? They are completely irrelevant to what I am and what I'm doing now, as will be anyone's qualifications or achievements in life when they're dead. So, Professor Dr. So-and-so of the such and such department, second in once removed cousin of whatever, in so-and-so a place, so what, is what I say to such an introduction. I'm not trying to be belittling or disrespectful, but this is what Sakkaya Ditthi is, personality view, thinking you are something. You're not. You're no better than the man next to you. The man next to you is no better than you. Put in a concrete box with no windows, no doors, naked, with each other, you'll be the same. We're all equal. And personality view is clinging, attachment to this physical body and this thinking brain, but mostly that clinging comes from achievement through acquisition, both in materialistic sense, gain, monetary gain, assets, cars, houses, even wives and relationships, children, and intellectual gain, knowledge, qualifications, achievements. All of this is not transferable, is not yours, and it's out of your control. Whatever you achieve with your physique and your body, however beautiful, handsome, strong or fit or athletic you are, when you're 90, you won't be so. It will be useless in that field of events. Whatever intellect you've gained, at some stage, maybe early in your life, or maybe very late, or even not at all, but your intellectual capacity, your mental ability will diminish, will go. As you get older, you lose the capacity to remember things as well, you forget things. But you'll retain that intellect, yes, that knowledge that you learned in your youth, maybe up until the day you die. but then it's gone. So what we're concentrating on in this practice is the development of our qualities. So that, in terms of Sotapanna, is Sakkaya Ditthi, a complete abandonment of that. So it's a full and comprehensive understanding, not knowledge of, not intellectual information, but understanding and actioning of the Four Noble Truths. That includes the Noble Eightfold Path and the characteristics of existence. The abandonment of rites and rituals, and the abandonment of personality view. That is what, it's not the experience, but that is what the attainment of Sotapanna is. That is the first level. Sotapanna means stream entry. And it's a level of understanding, an attainment of wisdom in Buddhism that is also irreversible. Because once you know this, you cannot unknow it. So it is also said, and this you can choose to believe or not believe, it doesn't matter, it cannot be proven. I'm saying that now to all of those who might want to, well, maybe I did say it a bit too, I might have been misunderstood, but anyway, it is said once you've attained to Sotapanna, you will only have 7 more rebirths, and they will be at least in the human realm. Because the science behind that is that as a result of having attained to Sotapanna, so as a result of understanding the Four Noble Truths, bearing in mind that includes karma and rebirth, in right view. Abandonment of rites and rituals and abandonment of personality view, Sakkaya Ditthi, having understood that, you cannot do anything to cause yourself to be born in any other realm. So therefore it is proven that you cannot be born in any other realm. Where the 7 times comes from, I'm not quite so sure, but it's a maximum of 7 times is what's quoted. So I can't prove that or understand that necessarily. But it's a maximum. It's not, you don't have to live another 7 times. So once you've attained to Sotapanna, that's the hardest bit. I'd say actually it's not the hardest bit. The hardest bit comes next, but the next 2 stages of enlightenment are more a progression, stages of progression, a progressive eradication, erosion of sensual desire and ill will more than anything else. And that takes a long, 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 long time until you reach or approach Sakadagami and Anagami, which is and finally Arahant, when you are able to abandon sensual desire and ill will completely, and all that remains then is, and what has to be abandoned, is the final few fetters, including conceit. Not conceit of a ego that's understood as the same meaning as ego, but conceit of belief that you are anything, either the same as, better than, worse than, and the belief or the understanding that there is something to be gained, to become from, either materialistically or spiritually. It's the final process of letting go. So of course that is ultimately the hardest stage. But the first hurdle for us to overcome, which is a case of really focusing and nailing down all of our natural human defilements, being the roots, being greed, hatred and delusion, the kilesas, Lobha, dosa, moha, the eradication of those comes really into that first stage of enlightenment, Sotapanna. So that's what it is. You do go on to say a few other things about that, but maybe what you go on to say is as a result of you not having quite the correct understanding of what Sotapanna means, thinking it is the path of practice rather than the attainment of that path of practice or the result of that path of practice, which is a different word entirely, if you meant that word. But I won't go into that now. Okay, does the Buddha body of perfect resource respond to my will in such a way where my determination to no longer eat meat eliminates the need for the meat to be provided, preventing the birth and suffering of an animal? So, the Buddha body of perfect resource is not something I'm familiar with, but you tell me comes from the Tibetan tradition. But what I will say is I don't think your body actually needs to eat meat regardless of that. You do need certain nutrients we get from meat, so one has to be careful to ensure you get those nutrients if you stop eating meat or fish or eggs or dairy products that contain, for example, vitamin B12 that does not come from vegetables. So you need to take something that contains vitamin B12, such as, well, I just take vitamin B12 pills. Sounds very un-monk-like, doesn't it? But Marmite's got yeast extract, has vitamin B12 in it, quite a lot. So does cheese, especially Edam cheese, but you can't get Edam cheese. You can get it in Sri Lanka, but it's extremely expensive. And I don't eat dairy products either, not for any ethical reasons. I've just chosen not to for practical reasons. The reason you don't get much cheese around here is because it's so hot. I mean, you'd make it, it'd be no good. For refrigeration, it's not practical. There are not many fridges around here. So, you know, we don't, cold countries have cheese. England has lovely cheese. France has lovely cheese because you can just put it in the cupboard, stays cool and lasts. It's marvellous. So this doesn't happen in Asia. You have weird kind of cheese, which is not what we refer to as hard cheese. It's soft cheese. And it's the hard cheeses that have vitamin B12 in. Eggs have vitamin B12 in, but I'm not keen on those either. So, I take supplement vitamin B12. Yeah, but your body doesn't need meat. So what's happening is it's nothing so esoteric and mystical, again, as some cultural influences on Buddhism imply, with such phrases as the Buddha body of perfect resource. Our body is resourceful. Yes, I wouldn't say it's perfect, it's suffering, but it's resourceful, and it will find the nutrients you need in the food you eat. The Tibetans, for example, are very resourceful people who get all of their nutrition in the winter from tsampa, which is just ground flour basically, toasted, and buttermilk. Because buttermilk contains all of that B12 and those nutrients that you don't get from eating meat, because they are vegetarian. And the tsampa is the other carbohydrates, calcium, other stuff you need. And in the summer, when they've got some vegetables and things, they eat some vegetables and things so that they don't get scurvy and other ailments through lack of vitamin C. So they're very resourceful. Naturally, as human beings, their bodies are naturally resourceful. It doesn't have to have a spiritual description. It's biological. And this is very much the beauty of Buddhism, that it's so very real and realistic. Now, I've lived without eating meat for, I don't know, more than 10 years. And I haven't had any, no problems as a result of it. Yes, I appreciate your sentiments, but it's not that complicated. Just don't eat meat and you'll be okay. Ultimately, if nobody ate meat, and yes, it would prevent animals being born to be eaten, or being farmed to be eaten. But we don't get on that soapbox. That's not necessary. It's we can only do our best and set a good example. I'm not sure how long I've spoken for, so I'll give it one more go. This is a long answer, short question, which I like, but a long answer probably. I struggle with craving and temptation, specifically drug-related. I meditate and practice yoga. Today I relapsed. How can I overcome this craving of doing drugs? It's very difficult. Your body is physically probably dependent on those drugs. It's not only your mind. The mind is the hardest thing to overcome, because your body, you can have substitutes, but please, you get some professional medical advice. I don't know, you're not saying what drugs you're taking. Don't go into withdrawal or cause yourself harm. Always take professional medical advice. And whatever anybody says on the internet, go and see someone for real, a real doctor, medical doctor, who can ensure that whatever you're giving up, you can do it safely. Firstly, okay? Do no harm. First, do no harm. But then that is the nature our minds are showing us. Beauty of our minds and this resourceful Buddha body, as the previous commenter described it, showing us the nature of desire, how powerful it is, how it can make us do something so stupid. Okay, maybe it had been out of necessity, so not necessarily entirely out of stupidity, but we all know when we do drugs or when we drink alcohol. I've done them all in the past, a long, long time ago, so I know you do it, you're stupid by doing it, but you're ignorant to even if you're not ignorant to the effects and the subsequent problems it may cause, you turn a blind eye to those things, don't you? For the momentary gain and pleasure that you have. The momentary satisfaction, gratification. You put aside, you turn a blind eye to how much suffering will be as a result of that. And this is, well, it's elaborated in the 12 links of dependent origination. So first I'll refer you to any of my videos and talks that are titled Giving Up Stuff, or Giving Up in the title, or 12 steps or 12 links of dependent origination. The 12 steps I refer to are never the 12 steps with NA or AA. In that sense, I've never gone on with those too well. And I've actually never met anyone who's lasted too long with those 12 steps. So I got rid of those 12 steps quite early in my giving up of things. And took on the 12 links of dependent origination as their alternative, and haven't touched such things for decades now. So, and don't bother thinking about it, or have to keep reminding myself about it either. It's in the past, what we did in the past. So look at those videos, those talks might help you understand where craving comes from. But what it basically, that 12 links of dependent origination, for the quick answer, is just the cravings showing you the Four Noble Truths. That there's suffering, yeah? And there's a cause of suffering. But the cause of suffering is that desire for something. And that when you get that something, it is as a result of thirst or craving, trying to satisfy the insatiable, satisfy something that cannot be satisfied. And by trying to satisfy it, you only add fuel to the fire. It's like trying to put out a fire with petrol or paraffin. It won't extinguish it, it will boost the flames and make the flames thirsty for more fuel. We have to just grin and bear it with professional medical help. Grin and bear it. And I trust you, the results are amazing. When you're no longer dependent, which is all you are, dependent on that craving. That's why it's called the 12 links of dependent origination. It's the origination of that dependency that we're looking at. That origination is ignorance. And the end result is birth, rebirth in the sense of the 12 links of dependent origination. But in this life and in each moment to moment, the minute we take that puff of marijuana or that diazepam or that shot of vodka or whiskey, we've just added fuel paraffin, petrol to the fire, and you've increased the thirst. What we need to add is water, pure water, to quench the thirst. And we do that through meditation. Understanding that the suffering is caused by that desire, knowing that that desire is what's causing your suffering, knowing your craving that you can so well and visibly see is caused by suffering. It's why so many monks are ex-alcoholics or ex-drug addicts, because they've seen in reality, very clearly, vividly, what the Buddha's teaching us. Not some esoteric, magical idea of suffering, or people may be suffering because they're not 100% living in luxury, but actually really suffering when you can't get a fix or you can't get a drink. You know, that's real bad craving, suffering, withdrawal, what's it called? The rattles or whatever going on. If ever you've really given up something that you're dependent on, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's very hard, physically and mentally. There's no better way of understanding the Four Noble Truths than that. So count your blessings in that respect and use it. Use it to see, and then use it to see how, when you relapsed, how bad you felt about it. To remind yourself not to do it again. But then also to understand that all it is to stop relapsing is to not do something. It's not an action, it's an inaction. You simply, like the precepts, refrain from. So the precepts are not actively go out and save all people from dying. It's just refrain from killing. It's not going to stop everybody from stealing. It's refrain from stealing. So what are you doing? Nothing. You're just not going to go and kill any sentient beings. You're not going to go and take anything that isn't yours. You're not going to engage in sexual misconduct. You're not going to lie. You'll refrain from taking intoxicants. What do you have to do to refrain from taking these intoxicants, drugs or alcohol? Just don't do it. Don't get up. Stay sitting down. You might have to really grin and bear it and, grit your teeth. If you're getting old like me, don't do that. Put something soft in your mouth because you might break some teeth. And I've just had mine beautifully repaired. Thank you all very much for your support and help with that. It's still ongoing, slow process, but now I have no discomfort when eating at all. And a lot of the food here is quite chewy, to put it politely. So I was struggling to get enough food, really, because I was in pain with my teeth. And now I've been able to go to the dentist, have it all treated. The first stage of that anyway, it's wonderful because I can eat the food, chew it up properly and digest it properly without going through the process quickly because I was in a little bit of discomfort. I won't say, agonizing pain, but it was difficult to eat. I didn't realize how difficult I was finding eating until my teeth were fixed. And now my teeth are fixed, I can really see what difficulty I was having just basically eating rice. Because some of the rice takes a bit of chewing, I must say. But anyway, I digress. Knowing these experiences, these real worldly experiences, is what's showing us the Four Noble Truths, without doubt. And then we can see that glimpse of understanding the third of those Four Noble Truths, of the end of suffering. And where does it come from? The end of suffering comes from following the Noble Eightfold Path. It's not a magic instant answer, but it is in a way, because it's just keeping those precepts. It all goes round in a beautiful circle, doesn't it? And practicing meditation, which is doing nothing, easy, and that's enough. The wisdom, the right view aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path, that will come naturally, as will SOTΑPANNA. That's how you attain to SOTΑPANNA. Gosh, I think that'll be the title for this talk, although it was one of the shorter questions. It kind of filtered through the rest of the answers, like all these discussions do. I know these talks are questions and answers talks, mostly. But that's only to give some variety to the subject matter of the Dharma we're talking about. we're discussing, as opposed to me lecturing. Isn't it a bit boring when you hear suttas just recited? And isn't it even a little bit more boring and even a little bit condescending when you hear suttas that have just been recited explained to you? Because I think actually the Buddha and his disciples and those that constructed the Pali Canon did a very beautiful job of writing it all down, and then subsequently the wonderful translations we have in our own mother tongues so well they don't warrant further explanation, let alone lectures. It's a little condescending, isn't it? So we can discuss here in this platform, as it's such an easy and readily available means for us to do so, the Dharma at length, like Dharma talks, but with content that's provided by you listening and by your comments. So some comments might be to some extent a challenge directed towards Buddhist philosophy. Maybe those comments coming from other theistic religions. But that too can be really understood as a way of coming to grips with the understanding of that Buddhist philosophy more clearly, by seeing it in relation to other beliefs, other conceptions, other opinions, which are not discounted, not discredited, but not necessarily understood either, when we have such a logical path as the Noble Eightfold Path to follow. So in that Noble Eightfold Path, there's everything there for you, including the teacher of that, the Buddha, those teachings, the Dharma, and us, the Sangha, the monks and nuns, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and then also lay practitioners, upasakas and upasikas, surrounding you, all of the people watching these videos and these talks and contributing to them by way of their comments, and those useful resources available to you to help you in your, I'm not going to say, oh, I can't help it, in your letting go of your addiction. I'm not going to say recovery, and I'm not going to say that addiction is an illness, and I'm not going to say that addiction is a disease. Birth is a disease, life is a disease, dis-ease. Yeah, that's what it means. Disease means dis, as opposed to not at. Ease, whereas I'm at ease. Where are you at ease? In meditation. If you're deeply absorbed in samadhi and jhana, free from bodily feelings, free from mental thought, you're really at ease. That's the very nature of jhana. That's the very nature of samadhi, being at ease. Anything other than that is dis-ease, not at ease, dis-ease, disease. So alcoholism is no more a disease than birth is a disease. Cancer is no more a disease than birth is a disease. People used to just die of old age, now they don't die of cancer. Because we've got names, labels, diagnoses, which help us live longer. So it's essential. But don't label what is our own root causes of suffering, greed, hatred and delusion, and disguise that greed, hatred and delusion with excuses. That's what I often see and experience when we hear things as being, oh, he can't help it, it's an illness. You can help it. It's up to you. I am saying this from a place of experience only. Otherwise I wouldn't be saying it to you. You can stop drinking alcohol. You can stop taking any drugs. You can be at ease. And if you need support in that, the Buddha Sasana, this religion, which is not a believing theistic ideal, but a philosophy and a system, is there to support you in your progression not recovery, your progression from what you are now to something much better, being that it is free from that craving, that thirst, free from attachment. This is the progressive nature of this practice and Buddhism, and how useful it is to us all from very different many walks of lives. From Professor so-and-so and so-and-so with the big, long name, to someone who's struggling to give up alcohol, who's never read philosophy or studied religion. It doesn't matter. When we're sitting in meditation, we're all equal. Then there's sort of a physical non-duality and oneness amongst us all, and love and peace and rose-tinted glasses, look at the universe. Of course, that's really nice, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with that. But the reality of it is, that is it, just that. We are this physical lump of flesh and a thinking brain. What knows that is what we're looking to liberate from that. And we can alleviate most of that suffering experienced by that physical lump and body and brain, alleviate all of that suffering by eradication of greed, hatred and delusion. Firstly, identifying desire and craving. So see this craving you've experienced and that relapse you've experienced as your lesson, your teacher, and you're pointing you to the Four Noble Truths. And I wish you all the very best with that. As you get older, will it be difficult to live alone? Or can you join a monastery where they will give you support in older age? Is that possible? Well, I'm getting older all the time. I don't know whether it will be difficult to live alone. As long as I can consume some food and take care of my basic toiletry needs. I think there's a sort of a medical list of needs higher that one is considered. Even that I think is quite advanced for a monk, but I don't need very much. So I'm not going here, there and everywhere. I'm not dependent on much. So I've been ill on a couple of occasions and not been able to go on Pindapata. Someone has always turned up here with food and also to check that I'm okay, whether I need medicine, which has then been provided, or being taken to a doctor, a hospital or a dentist, whatever's necessary. So I hope I can just stay exactly as I am. Monasteries aren't healthcare centres, hospitals, old age, what are they called? Old people's homes or anything like that. They might just inherently, by natural progression, have monks getting older who need additional care, and that's part of the Sangha's duties to look after their members, younger monks looking after older monks, which is why they don't encourage too older monks to join, because they would become top heavy on the care needs. But for me, I don't see or envisage needing anything more than I've already got. Or if I was a lay person, if I was a lay practitioner, the same question, you'd ask the same question. I'd have the same question that I don't know the answer to. When something's going to happen, cause me to die, either I'll just die in my sleep or in my meditation, or I'll get a terminal illness and need some help and care. But I think I'm more like the elephant. I'll wander off into the forest and die alone rather than cause the rest of the herd too much difficulty and trouble. That's what as monks, wandering ascetics, samanas, Dhutanga monks, that's what we can do. So no, I wouldn't join a monastery because I'm ill. I think that would be the wrong reason to join a monastery. I'd join a monastery if I felt I could go and assist and help, contribute to a community. I don't feel that I can contribute to a community. So it's why I think I'm better practicing alone, where I can contribute by way of example to others, I hope, and sometimes assist others in that direction. So yeah, I think more than I say, I'm well taken care of now. I think however ill I become, I'm not going to need much more. Maybe there would be expensive medicines, but do you really need them? It rather depends, doesn't it? We'll see what happens. I hope to report back to you on that. Watch this space. I'm 58 this year. Let's say if I'm lucky, in 20 years' time, will I still be sitting here? Maybe I'll need to sit on a cushion or a chair. Or maybe I'll be laying down with the phone positioned above me somewhere. I don't know. We'll probably have a whole different 20 years' time. Who knows how this I'm sure this format, what we're doing here, won't be anything like it is now anyway. So whether I'll be involved in that or not, who knows? I don't even think of such things. So you've got me thinking about it there. You've got me thinking about it out loud. And clearly I've never thought about it. So I don't need to think about it. What matters is what we're doing now, in the present moment. And if we're doing good where we're doing it, then in that community, in the surroundings, if you're not a burden on them now, and you're contributing, and you're doing something positive, then you can be confident they'll look after you when you need them to help you, I think. So I've experienced that anyway so far. If there's something useful there, I hope you can use it. There we are. And if not, then let it go. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu. Oh.